Hello classmates, my name is Matthew Clark. I'm a student in Professor Shao's Biology 101 course this semester, and today I will be giving a presentation on personal genomics. I chose this topic as the human genome has always fascinated me, particularly in that they play a key role in determining our traits. You may have asked yourself at some point in your life why you might look more like one of your parents than the other. Or maybe somebody in your family tree has had a terminal illness or condition that you're concerned about having. That's where personal genomics comes into play. The genome is a complete set of DNA instructions within an organism. By analyzing our genomes, we can gain valuable insights into our ancestry, health, and traits. Despite these advantages, there are significant ethical and privacy concerns with regards to personal genomics that have been a long topic of debate amongst experts. Let's start off with the history of personal genomics. It all started with the Human Genome Project, which was a project launched in October of 1990 by an international group of researchers who sought to sequence the human genome and a select set of organisms to include E. coli, baker's yeast, fruit flies, nematodes, and mice. The project completed in April of 2003 when researchers successfully produced the first sequence of the human genome. Despite this significant scientific breakthrough, the cost associated with personal genomics was too high for the average person to afford. A fun fact to put the price into perspective, Apple co-founder Steve Jobs became one of the first people to have his genome sequenced for a price of $100,000. It wasn't until the 2010s that we would see costs become more affordable to the average person and the emergence of genomic companies in the consumer market to include 23andMe, Navigenics, Pathway Genomics, and Ancestry DNA. To understand how personal genomics works, we must first understand what DNA is and how genes control our traits. DNA is a molecule within our body that stores genetic information as well as transmits inherited genetic information from one generation to the next. So how does DNA end up becoming our traits? That can be explained by the theory and process known as the central dogma. The central dogma proposes that genetic information in cells flows from DNA to mRNA to protein. Genes, which are segments of DNA, codes mRNA, which then codes proteins. These specific proteins, how much of them are produced, and where and when they activate result in your traits. As I stated previously during the history of personal genomics, it was introduced into the consumer market in the early 2010s. The decreased cost and increased availability of direct-to-consumer services made testing your own genomes both possible and popular. This led to the emergence of popular genomic companies such as 23andMe, Navigenics, Pathway Genomics, and Ancestry DNA. You're probably wondering how your DNA is obtained through one of these services, so I'll use 23andMe as an example. After purchasing their DNA testing service, 23andMe sends you a test kit. The test kit requires you to collect a sample of your saliva in a tube and register the collection tube's barcode. The sample then gets sent to a lab that analyzes your DNA by extracting DNA from the saliva. After the lab receives your sample, you should have results available in your account within 4 to 6 weeks. Those results are dependent on which service you purchase, but include information such as ancestry, trait, health predisposition, wellness, carrier status, pharmacogenetics, exome sequencing, and blood test panels. Personal genomics offers several benefits but also comes with risks that should be considered prior to testing. One benefit is in health, as our genetic profile can help doctors tailor personalized medicine and preventative treatments for conditions we are at risk for. Another benefit is the ability to discover your ancestral roots, giving us a better understanding of our family lineage and may even lead to the connection with previously unknown relatives. Lastly, by getting tested, you contribute to growing genomic databases, which can help advance genomic research and lead to the development of new medicine. Risks that should be taken into consideration are family discovery. You may find out information about your family that you did not want to know, or that somebody else didn't want you to know. For example, you may find out that one of your parents isn't your biological parent. Privacy. Your genome contains sensitive information about you and your family that is at risk of being leaked or misused. Social. People with knowledge of your genetic risk might discriminate you by treating you differently, or a medical insurer denying you coverage. And psychological. Knowing that you are at risk for certain conditions may cause stress or anxiety even if that condition never develops. Genome privacy is your right to control the access and use of your genetic information. Genome privacy is a potential issue because your genetic information contains sensitive information regarding you and your relatives. Additionally, your genome is unique and it doesn't change, so once that information is compromised, it's compromised. Data breaches and leaks are a concern as your genetic information is stored on the genomic company's server. If that database is hacked or sold, you have little to no control over who sees your genetic information from then on. Information misuse is a concern as sometimes a third party may use your genetic information without your consent. For example, a law enforcement agency may use your genetic data to try and solve a crime. Lastly, consent is a concern as you may not fully understand what or how your genetic data is being used by these companies or researchers. I have not personally used any of the genomic company testing services, but my wife has. She was initially interested in learning more about her lineage on her father's side, as it was always a mystery to her and rarely ever talked about in her family. She got tested through Ancestry DNA, and the results left her with more questions than answers. She found that the results seemed heavily biased towards inherited traits from her mother's side of the family, as there was little to no data from her father's side. She believes that if her father were to get tested, which she has already said no to, the results would be very different. She was also skeptical to how the user is able to upload documents and data into the family tree database, which is then accepted as true. She believes that there's a risk of untrue information making its way into the database, which could heavily skew results. In conclusion, personal genomics is a scientific breakthrough that enables us to better understand our ancestry, health, and traits. Now that testing is more affordable to the average person, I personally would be interested in getting tested myself. My mom has a history of high blood pressure that she takes medication for, and I would like to know if I'm at risk of having high blood pressure myself. I would ask everybody who's interested in the idea of getting their genomes analyzed to strongly consider the pros and cons of doing so before making that decision. I have included all of the references that were used to create this presentation. Thank you all for listening, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.